give on you for the debrief. So we're we got like 30 people, it looks like, joining. We had over 100 sign up, so we'll kind of wait for just another minute here, and then we'll get started shortly. So I appreciate everybody joining. All right, it looks like the numbers stopped adding up. So we'll just get started here. Welcome to the April chapter meeting for ASHRAE. This is a pretty exciting meeting for us. We're really grateful to have Randy from the state join us and give a code update, code refresher, and just allow us to ask some questions about what's coming and what's coming down the line. This is another reason why it's a pretty special meeting is we're doing a joint meeting today with the CSI Chapter of Milwaukee, which that's the Construction Specifications Institute. So if you're not familiar, ASHRAE members, that's another organization here in Milwaukee. And we'll have Bruce just kind of give them a couple minutes and a little bit here to welcome everybody from CSI. But we're just grateful for Zoom to be able to do this relatively easily. So just kind of a friendly reminder, we're probably going to have, anywhere from 30 to 100 people on. So if you could just make sure your microphones are muted. And for questions, we're going to try to answer all the questions at the end. Well, Randy's going to try to answer the questions at the end. So if you could just type those into the chat as they come up, that'd be great. And we can go to the next slide, Kathleen. So this is our second to last chapter meeting for the year. Our last one will be June 14th. We'll send out all the emails to the ASHRAE email list. We're going to have Dr. Tom Lawrence come talk to us about resilient buildings. And then after that, we'll be done for the 2020 and 2021 year. And we'll be finishing up with our golf outing back at Shaniqua, Monday, July 19th. We'll be sending out a lot more information for that. Last year it filled up right away. So as soon as it comes out, be sure to sign up your foursome and take that Monday off and enjoy some nice golf at Shaniqua. And I already saw a question come up. Will PDFs be sent out for all the slides? That's a good question for Randy. So I'll let you answer that as you take over. But before that, I think we got to give a little bit of a shout out and congratulations to our 2021 Technology Award winner, to Grumman Buckus, specifically Jason Leffingwell, who is actually on the call here and just going to give a brief summary. But his project with Aurora, doing some boiler plant upgrades, won the award for us. So this was great for us to do. And Jason, I just want to say thank you for all the detail and time you did put in to submit this. And yeah, I'll hand it over to you to just give a brief overview of your project and what you guys did.
Sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's a great opportunity. So we had, it started off with a boiler plant upgrade down at Aurora Lakeland, down in the Elkhorn area. Their boiler plant is a remote plant from the hospital proper. They had, they've got 400 horse and a 600 horse power fire tube boilers producing steam, anywhere from 100 to 80 to 100 pounds given the season of the year. And they had been operating without a deaerator for about 2 years. And so they had come to us looking for some solutions to optimize their facility. And we had put together a couple of mini little studies looking at various options that they could do to optimize their plant. And things came back to dollars and cents, and they didn't have the money to make those upgrades. So they had come to us, said we had a fixed dollar amount. What can we do? So we went back to the table again and figured out what we would be able to do for the dollars allotted for their upgrade for that particular year. And so For about $600,000, we had upgraded a burner on the 400 horsepower boiler. That we did a payback analysis on that, and that was less than 7 years. We'll say right around 7 years for the replacement of that burner. They got a little bit more than 10-to-1 turn down, so it was greater, somewhat greater than the existing burner that was probably anywhere from about 12 to 15 years of age. So we added O2 trim, linkageless controls, and we also had provided a new master controls center for that plant. So we upgraded the controls for the boiler, provided one for the deaerator that we ultimately included in that plant as well. And then we tied in the 600 horsepower boiler, which we didn't touch because they primarily used the 400 horse for the bulk of the year for their steam production. So we had, when looking at that, overall, it was the burner was going to pay for itself in 7 years, which was what Aurora was looking for. And we had ultimately put together a new burner, boiler, feed water system with a new deaerator, variable speed pumps integral to the pumps themselves. The drives were integral to the pumps themselves. And we'd abated an existing 800 horsepower boiler that sat in between the two 400 and 600 horse devices, all for less than $600,000. So we were able to really meet their budget available, and we gave them a system that has been now just about a year up and running. So COVID had hit and kind of didn't really mess up the construction process of that at all. They were pretty much wrapping up and commissioning it at that point. So they've been operating for about a year now, and there are some kinks that they've been working through over the summer with the controls and whatnot. But in the end, they're very happy with what they've received for their system. We also submitted the number of items that we provided to Focus on Energy, and they were able to get I believe, right around $10,000 to $11,000 incentive from the utility for what we had provided for the package for that project. So in short, pretty straightforward, but we were all focused on the replacement, and we were able to do it, and the owner is extremely happy. So hey, there's money out there for incentives for replacing equipment. Don't forget about it. As engineers, we can do a service to our owners. So that's all I got.
That's great. Well, thanks, Jason, for
Yeah,
that, and congratulations again on winning. So
Thank you.
just for the ASHRAE community, what that means is, so you won the local, the Wisconsin Chapter award. So now we'll head up to regional and, hopefully advance from regional all the way to nationals. So we'll see how far it goes. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're thinking about 2022. We'd love to get as many applicants as possible for next year. So just the criteria is that the job has to be running for a year so we can see some energy analysis standpoint and get some more data behind it. So as you're completing projects this year, think about submitting them for next year so we can get a lot more submissions. So appreciate you taking the time to do that, Jason. And Bruce, I'll hand it over to you from CSI to just kind of give an intro to this meeting here.
Well, yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Nick. CSI is an organization that we have, covers the specifications. We have chapters in Milwaukee, up in Green Bay area, and also in Madison, and probably a couple hundred members total. And we concentrate on the specifications, the teaching of what we call the CDT, Construction Document Technology, trying to teach people how to actually read specifications and what they mean and the processes that we need to follow versus just going to the architect or going to the contractor and asking questions that are inappropriate and, all of those types of things. That's it's a little bit like herding cats. When you get onto a quote or that type of thing, but this is what we do. And we're just, both organizations are working together. We're sharing our resources, our people, our presentations, We also will be going into June, and then we plan for the next year in July and August. And if there's any questions, you can always just CSI Milwaukee, CSI Milwaukee, CSI Fox Valley, and get a hold of us. So I appreciate you allowing us to be to hear and give me my 2 minutes in the sun.
Sounds good. Well, with that, we'll hand it over to Randy. Take it
All
away.
right. Well, let's just see if I can get everything all organized. I'm going to take the screen over here, hopefully. And I've got 3 screens, so I guess I got to pick one, right? How's that? Does that work for everyone? Just a sec. Cancel.
Here we go.
Come on. Oh. I was there. Where are we at?
It looks like we're seeing your first slide here. Division of Industry Services overview.
Okay, you can see that. That's good. All right. Having said that, with that said, let's get started. My name is Randy Dahmen. I'm with the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services. I've been a worker with the state of Wisconsin for 26 years. I'm a commercial plan reviewer. Many of you may have attended training in which I might have talked for a little while. And the fact that you still showed up today knowing that I was going to be talking, I'm quite impressed. So I'd like to thank you for attending. Previous to this, in another life, I actually worked in the Milwaukee area. I worked at A.O. Smith Automotive on the north side as a design engineer. I actually designed steel truck frames and connections. And from there, I made it to Carnes in Verona and designed HVAC equipment, rooftop units, etc. And that's kind of where I got my foot in the door for specialty in mechanical engineering. So it's been an interesting progression, as they say. Now, just to kind of get things rolling here, the division has taken on a new persona as things have changed over time, new administration, there's new people. So I thought maybe I'd just kind of discuss some of the things that are going on and some of the people that are involved with our efforts. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is take on kind of an overview of our division. Let's see here, hopefully. And it's a coming. Can you see that?
Nope. I still see the main slide.
Okay, let's that is not coming through. All right, so we'll have to.
I guess I'll just take this to just remind everybody it looks like everybody's muted, but just a reminder with so many attendees, mute your lines.
Here we go. Okay. All right, how's that? Is that a little better?
Yeah.
You got a different. You got.
It's not in the presentation view though. It's just in the generic PowerPoint slide.
Yeah, it's the industry services. Is that the correct one?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one we want. But I'm trying to. Guess I'm not getting the right screen. So let's try.
I know it always hides it on you.
What helps me is I have 3 screens here.
Oh, that's great. All right, now we're on the main. We're
How's
on the
that?
view, which looks good, and it's the first
Did
slide.
you get a change in a slide?
It hasn't changed yet. I don't know if it's.
Got to get that right page. go here, screen 3. How's that?
It's just switched back to the PowerPoint. It's not the presentation view.
I've got everything here.
Yeah.
How frustrating. Well,
We can just, I mean,
how's that?
there you go. All right.
Hey,
that works.
finally. All right. I apologize, everyone. You know, us old guys, as we start moving forward, you know, I was happy to get one screen years ago, and then they went to two. And I had a 44-inch screen and a 22-inch screen. And then just recently, they afforded me a laptop, which its own third screen. So now I have 3 screens to view at. So if you thought I was doing work before, I am really flying now because I have 3 screens. But it's been very helpful. Now, just some points about the department. Our leader is our secretary, Dawn Krim. Dawn has been a very strong promoter of the activities that go on into our department. As many of you know, as professional engineers and architects, our licenses go through them. And for those of you who are HVAC contractors, all of those licenses, whether through the trades or as professional licenses, go through the Department of Safety and Professional Services. Additionally, and what many of the architects and engineers are more aware of, is that the plans for commercial buildings, as well as for plumbing and elevators and pouts and various other elements, all come through the department for review, and in many cases have inspections either by a state inspector or by local inspectors. And Dawn has really been progressive on all of our behalfs. Plan review was out as much as 13 weeks as the new administration came into play, and we're at this point 4 to 6 weeks with the simpler plans out, about 4 weeks, the more complex plans, because we don't have as many reviewers on those available to perform that, out roughly 6 weeks. And as you'll find out, we'll probably be out a little bit here shortly, and I'll address that accordingly. But Dawn's been a great promoter. She's worked with our inspectors. She's been to our trainings, etc. Recently, Deputy Secretary Donna Moreland has joined us. Former Deputy Secretary Trammell became a Dane County judge and was appointed such. So Donna came in as a replacement, and she's getting her feet solidly based on what we do, and has been very helpful here in the COVID pandemic in getting information out and tying all of us together for positive communications. Many of you may have talked to Dan Harris. Dan has been an assistant deputy secretary and does a lot of speaking around the state. He's kind of the left arm, right arm of Secretary Krim, and is a very helpful individual, very easy to talk to. The department representatives, at least for our division, include Brandon Piper. Now, Brandon originally was a bureau director for field services, so that would include all the inspectors out in the field, whether it be elevators, commercial building, plumbing, boilers, refrigeration, carnival rides, the whole gambit. When the position of division administrator opened up, he was appointed to that position to take over, and Brandon's been a very solid leader for us in our division. Now, below Brandon are 2 bureau directors. The one is Gary Krause. He's our bureau director for integrated services, and that's basically the group that does the plan reviews, whether it's pouts or electrical or building plans, plumbing plans. Gary's pretty much in charge with oversight of those. Now, Jackie Owens took the replacement of Brandon when he moved to division administrator, and she is the bureau director for the field services. So she's basically got the oversight of all the field directives. So any inspections as it involves those kind of efforts, Jackie is basically has the oversight on those. Justin Gaffin has been with us just short of 2 years, and he's my supervisor. Justin's out of the Green Bay office and is a licensed professional here in Wisconsin. He is the section chief for commercial building plan review. Very good guy, easy to talk with, very knowledgeable, and I think any of you've had the chance to talk with him or will in the future time will hopefully say the same. Mike McNally is one of our section chiefs, and he's involved with fire suppression and fire alarm. So if you have a commercial building, he's the supervisor of the plan review group involved with those types of plans, as well as for those of you who may be involved with the Uniform Dwelling Code, or if you will, the electrical code, he is the supervisor, if you will, or section chief over those groups also. So he has his hands full with some very aggressive groups. Oh, I got too many here. All right. Additional people include Brad Johnson, who's a section chief. He's involved with fire prevention and private sewage plan review, POUTS, if you will. Brad's been around a long time. He's up in the Green Bay office, has a lot of experience. Kim Schmidt is one of our section chiefs here in the Waukesha office, and he's involved with oversight of the boiler and refrigeration inspection, elevator plan review, and elevator inspection throughout the state. Lucas Dietrich is currently, just recently, I should say, become the section chief for the commercial building and safety inspectors throughout the state. So we have state inspectors in all the different counties throughout the state. Where the local municipality is not delegated, then our state inspectors perform the commercial building inspection. Additionally, we have safety inspectors as it involves industrial hygienists, as well as carnival rides and ski tows, things such as that, that he's also providing oversight on. Another important cog to the wheel, and she's been very busy lately, is Charlene Voigt, and she's involved with records management. So all the plans that are submitted to the division, she's working with the plan entry and the plan scheduling group to get them out to us as reviewers. So just a little history of what's happening behind the scenes with people. Specifically commercial building plan reviewers, we have several, and I decided to put the names up in the most experienced to the newest comers. So those of you who may know Jack Miller. Jack is out of our La Crosse office. He's been with us over 30 years. Mokhtar's out of the Madison office. Mokhtar Tamal has been with us 27 years. Steve Dobratz, who is formerly our section chief, but is now a commercial plan reviewer, has been with the state for 27. Myself, I've been around for 26. Shenlai Zhu's been around with the department roughly 16 years. And then we were very fortunate when we had basically a large group of retirements, a wonderful group to come in. Jason Hansen is out of our Green Bay office. Mark Paquette's out of our Waukesha office. Larry Wiest, Green Bay office. Tom Westland out of our Hayward office. Some additional reviewers include Eric Hansen, which would be our Hayward office. Phil Bailing out of our Hayward office. Tim Carson, Green Bay. Jennifer Zedler is with us out of our Onalaska office. Alrighty. Jeremy Cockle is out of the Madison office. Bill Wagner is out of our Green Bay office. Kimberly Lee is out of our La Crosse office, and Dave Jones out of our Madison office. Some of you may know our inspectors. Brian Noah is our most experienced inspector. He's out of the Menasha area, if you will. Joe Mershak is on our northwest portion of the state. Brett Radke's in the La Crosse, Eau Claire area. Ryan Gagger is basically just to the south of Green Bay. John Gibbs is in the Kenosha, Racine, Milwaukee area, basically the area that this group usually works with. Dan Shanahan takes basically everything north of Wausau. Dave Peterson is down in the southwest. Tom Steiner's in the Madison's basically south central. And Chad Rothmeyer just recently joined the department. He's in the Green Bay area and be slowly extending his reach to other counties as he gets more experience. Some actions of note right now, all plans, plan review as it involves the commercial building code, are all electronically submitted. There is no paper plans at this point in time. Quite frankly, our entire staff is working from home. And I'll be honest with you, it's been a very unique year working from home. I think I like the fact that I don't have to get up quite as early and I don't have to get dressed up with a cold to walk out to the cold in the middle of January. But on the other hand, my wife is working here and I have a daughter working here. And yeah, there's some good things and there's some bad things. You know, we all have our own work schedules and we have trainings, etc. So sometimes we get too many people in the house, if there is such a thing. So it can be challenging. But it has been very effective. We've really got a lot done, even though it's maybe not a perfect world. I know I don't have all my references at my fingertips, but I think everybody's really performed their jobs admirably under some very unique situations. Inspections, well, inspections are exactly what they are. They're inspections in the field, but given COVID, there's been some challenges as to the how they're performing their work. So instead of just necessarily going out to the field and working, they're now performing inspections by way of, say, video feeds, something that really was unheard of up to about a year ago, but it's been becoming more and more commonplace. Recently, all the reviewers around the state have updated their computer system as well as their computer screens and all the effective workings and inner workings of the system involving various computer programming. So that's been a bit of a challenge. And as of recent, we've been challenged by the fact that we've got a new computer system for our plan review process, which I'll get into here in a bit. So one of the actions of note, and many of you have typed in a few questions already, which is fine, the Electronic Safety and Licensing Application, eSLA. You'll find that reference quite often. Electronic Safety Licensing Application, eSLA, was recently implemented. And so as of roughly April 2nd, the system went into place. We were in a blackout mode in that we were reviewing plans. It's just that we couldn't create any letters or save any letters on the systems, whether it be the old system or the new system. Thus, they called it a blackout. But we did continue to review plans as a review staff. The new programming, instead of using what we formerly used was Adobe Pro, is now using Bluebeam and gives us a little bit more versatility in our efforts. As part of our continuing efforts, we're also reviewing state budgets and how it relates to our department and what we can do for staffing and extending some of our initiatives is to reduce plan review times, increase the speed in which licensing is issued to the fields, things such as that. Additionally, many of you may or may not know there's a statewide initiative, if you will, for green to be more energy effective. Certainly in the view of the commercial building code or even the uniform dwelling code, the energy conservation chapters are certainly items of review. And of course, if you're going to look at them, many times they tie to the rest of the code. So both the UDC and the commercial building code are being reviewed for adapting newer standards and newer code. And speaking of that, the Commercial Building Code Committee is meeting, okay? And if you want to see the members, the dates, the summaries of the discussions, you can go on our website and they're there and available for public view. And just to kind of give you an idea, this is what you can get on our website. You can see here that for Commercial Building Code Committee, you can see that they've had meeting just recently, April 12th, and their next one is scheduled for May 10th. They've got a meeting each and every month throughout the rest of this year. And they're in the process of reviewing the 2021 International Code Council codes. So that would include the International Building Code, Mechanical Code, Energy Code, Fuel Gas Code, as well as the existing building code. So that's a very large staple of codes and languages that needs to be reviewed, and they are currently working on that. I am not on the committee, although I expect at some point in time I'll be pulled in to address any questions that may come up for various chapters. It's a good group of individuals. We're very fortunate to have the group we have. Some of you may recognize some of the names on the council. Richard Powers from the Milwaukee area, Brian Rinke, Jennifer Aker, Mike Adamovich, Kevin Bierce, Steve Harms, Will Herbert, Steve Howard, Matt Marsaniak, and Irma Rogazin. And it's a very good group. Many are still held over from the last effort. We're very fortunate to have their insights. The public can attend the meetings. There's usually a point in the discussion where the public can ask questions or provide insights. Otherwise, the committee, has their own rules. But like I say, as of late, because of COVID, they have been working through the internet via Skype or Zoom or any numerous teams to address the council. So if you wanted to see what was being said, you certainly can make a request to be part of that committee and be part of that internet transmission. So that's kind of a quick, dirty summary on the background of the department, some of the things going on, some of the people that are driving us forward. Now, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to address the eSLA, which is our new programming. All right, hopefully everybody saw that. It was a little easier this time around, right? So having said that, again, eSLA is new. It's replaced a system that we used to call was regulated objects. And basically within it has all the customer names, owners' names, project locations, type of projects, addresses, phone numbers. It's just a massive system. What we've done over the last several years, the department has created this new system for use. And there was reasons we couldn't maintain the old system. It just was not compatible with newer versions of Microsoft. And that was just not something we could move forward with. So we did have to move forward with new programming. Now, I'll touch base very short, eSLA background, the why the transition, the introduction to Salesforce as to what it is, what is that programming, who's using it. And then some basic foundations as to what we call the back office, which is the side that I work on, versus the portal where you, the customers, will be working from. So a little background on eSLA. The entire mission of the eSLA project was to help DSPS make it easier to do business in Wisconsin and protect its citizens by designing and implementing an innovative and customer-centered solution. So of course, the big question, if it ain't broke, why try to fix it? Well, that was part of the problem. We couldn't move forward with some of the Microsoft programming that is inherent for the use throughout the state of Wisconsin with our older system. So we did need to move forward with a new computer design complementary to the current times and the technology that's currently being used. So some of the driving forces was to transform and streamline our business. Prior to eSLA, under our old programming, submitters would submit information. Our people would have to type it all in individually. It was a lot of lost time. And then when we went to electronic plans, although it was convenient for all inclusive, it did create another input by our individuals for plan entry to create a SharePoint site for the download of the electronic plan. So that's a lot of hand motions on our side. So by going to eSLA, we can streamline this where our people don't have to retype it twice and have to move electronic files around. So that's part of the driving force. We also want to, elevate our customer service. We want to have a better relationship, be able to more availability of our people to help our customers. And if we can eliminate some of the data input on our end, that'll give our people more time and effort to work on other items, inclusive of some of the questions driven by our customers. Another item of transition is to strengthen the brand of the department, ensure we take steps to respect our customers, provide positive experiences. And then lastly, and I've touched on it, we needed to ensure that we had Windows 10 compatibility, which our old system did not have. Now, what is its value? Well, it all depends. It's all a matter of where you sit within the system. Now, obviously, you have customers, and that's basically what this group is. They're the customers, and one of the conveniences is you can pay online. Okay, so you set up your appointment. The programming sets you up with what the cost is. You pay online, and everything's set to go. You can verify the status of your particular plans at any point in time, so you can find out, hey, have they been submitted? Have they been accepted? Have they been reviewed? Is there additional information requested, or have they been approved? You can find that all out. Plan entry, as I've indicated, it's invaluable for them because they, quite frankly, don't have a lot of input as what they've had in the past. They've spent literally hours and hours and hours putting data input for individual plans. And with the application of eSLA, a lot of that manual labor will be eliminated, making us much more effective. As a reviewer, again, it's similar to our old system. Everything's going to be automatically stored. We're going to have the plan review fees automatically calculated. From an inspection standpoint, they can use a mobile device to review plans or even pull up old letters that I might have sent out on particular projects. And then, from a supervisory standpoint, people can evaluate, what has been effective, what isn't effective, what have we approved or held lately, what are those percentages, what kind of information are we holding on, and they can accumulate all of that. And so it makes it a little bit better process all the way around. So again, the back office, this is where we at the Department of Safety and Professional Services really work. It's going to help us process your applications. It'll help us interact with customers, getting information out, both in and out. And we're going to manage workflow a little bit better. Many of you may be aware that for many, many, many years, as long as I've been here, we've pretty much gone by a scheduled date where you have an appointment and you're given a particular date. You made sure your plans were there before a date. Sometimes it was 2 or 3 days. Recently, it's been maybe as much as 5 to 10 days, depending on the particular program. And the idea was that we would plus or minus a day or two, depending on what previous plans, if they were really good plans or maybe not so good plans, we'd try to give you a general date as to when those plans that you're submitting would be reviewed. Now, with the adoption of eSLA, as I said, we've had a lot of changes. One of the things that the department chose to do is to go with a first in, first out situation or application. And the idea is that, first person to get their plans in, that's the first one to be reviewed. Now, there are a few exceptions. Obviously, if I reviewed a 10-story UW-Madison chemistry building and spent nearly a week on it, we probably don't want to send the HVAC plans to another reviewer because I'm already well knowledgeable of that particular building, and it would take another plan reviewer an extensive amount of time to catch up with what I already know. So there is a few exceptions. Additionally, we have reviewers that maybe not as experienced in the plan review effort as some of us older people who've been around and have had unique experiences in some of the more complex type buildings. So there is some differential as to the type of plans coming in and how they get divided amongst the staff. But I want to emphasize that if you're looking for a particular review date, you will not be receiving them anymore. What you will do and what the department's working on is to try to tell you where you are in the entourage of multitude of plans. So for instance, if you were the first one in, more than likely you're going to be the first one out, right? That's the way it's going to work. If you're the 100th one, well, of course, the first question somebody goes, well, what's that mean? If I'm the 100th set of plans, does that mean I'm 2 days out or a week out or 2 weeks out? Well, obviously that depends, right? If you had a bunch of small plans, that might be a very short period of time. If for whatever reason, if it's spring like it is now, usually the plans are a little bit more in depth because most of the complex buildings start in early spring. Now, it's just a general commentary based on experience. But the point in all of this is it's going to be first in, first out, and there won't be a particular date. Now, of course, the question is, well, geez, that was so handy. It was effective. It really helped us to time, when we needed to get projects done. Yeah, that probably did work well for the design community, but we had some real difficulties on the department side, because what would happen is the design community would schedule various plans, and then for whatever reason, they chose to not fulfill the appointment. So we'd have these multitude of gaps in our scheduling. And then we'd start looking for plans that were available to review perhaps earlier, which everybody always loves to get their plans reviewed earlier. But maybe in some cases, if we were out at that time 13 weeks, needless to say, the plans weren't available to us. So what we've done is ensured that if before it even gets into the process, it has to be a complete plan set. And only then will the plans be placed into the first in, first out accommodations. Now on the customer portal, this is the side that the customers will be using. Basically, you're going to submit your applications, identify what the plans are, what you need done, information on the owner, the site, the designer, and then, what actions do you want us to take? Okay, this is a building plan review. This is a building HVAC plan review. This is a sprinkler plan review. And then, of course, the system will allow you to search the database. Hey, how many plans do I have? When's my next plan review? When do I have to have, when was that letter issued for additional information, et cetera. So all of this can be found online. There are some training resources available if you go to our home website. For DSPS, we do have some training right up front. I encourage, before starting asking questions, go through that training. Some very good information is available to the public. The department did provide, a week ago Friday, a public training on eSLA and what it can and can't do, and some of the strengths of its efforts. It was a very good showing. I think it was an hour and a half thereabouts. Had some very good feedback from it. Now, although it's new to the commercial building group, the point I'd like to make here is that actually eSLA was implemented starting way back in 2018 as it relates to the UDC, the dwelling unit contractor certifications, manufactured homes, soil certification, POUTS, and the Uniform Dwelling Code. Then there was a second launch in June of 2019 as it involved amusement rides, ski tows, public safety, mechanical refrigeration, pressure vessels, gas systems, public swimming pools, plumbing products. Then in 2020, roughly January, February, commercial building products. Many of you may have worked with Jack Miller with those. The electrical group, fire dues, and mines, explosives, and fireworks got online. And the last two groups to really join eSLA is the commercial building and structures group, as well as the elevator group. And many of you may have worked with Brian Roush out of our Waukesha office. So eSLA is not new. I found it interesting this week in talking to a longtime submitter. I'll just say his first name is Harold. And he commented that he did plumbing plans and building plans. And he said, he said, don't get me wrong, it was awkward to get started with eSLA. He said, but once I understood what I was doing, I got comfortable with it. He said, I really like the system. Things seem to go pretty fast, and I can move on to other things. He said, I know what to anticipate. And I think that was a good summary, because I know when I first was provided the opportunity to work on the portal side or the customer side, I was kind of overwhelmed because I wasn't sure what was to occur next. And I would agree that as you use the system more and more, it's easier and easier to use, and you get faster and faster at it. Our plan review staff is in a learning mode at this time. We've only been at it for a week. Although we've been trained on it, it's very different when you actually use it. And we're getting faster. And as time progresses and we get through the transition plans, which basically started in regulated objects and have moved to eSLA, and we're still in transition between the two programs. Once we get past that transition in roughly a week, 2 weeks, I think in the big picture, we're going to be moving a lot faster in our review efforts. And I think in the big picture, that'll be a positive for everyone. Now, there's a timeline, just kind of a rough idea. And this was in 2020, and everything got moved back a year, mainly because of COVID, et cetera. So everything took a back seat. But basically, they restarted it up, and this is really the 2021 drive. And like I say, roughly April 2nd is when we put eSLA into place for public use. Now, the introduction to Salesforce, some of you may have never heard of Salesforce. It's programming. It's something that's been very popular throughout the United States. Specifically, the state of Ohio has incorporated Salesforce into its efforts. And in doing so, they were able to find that they saved 57% of their time and effort in just simply processing licenses. They had over 750,000 registered users, 52% reduction in the renewal processing time, and roughly 97% of license and renewal applications are simply renewed electronically, which saves a heck of a lot of time from mailing individual envelopes. Some points of emphasis to make everyone aware of: Salesforce, which is the basis of eSLA. 83% of Fortune 500 customers use Salesforce, roughly 2.3 million users worldwide. And literally the number of customers is 150,000 plus and growing. Now, in the backside, it basically organizes data, from building to city to designer. Basically, whatever we wish to set up, we can organize the data as accumulated within Salesforce. It's a very flexible tool, and quite frankly, we're still learning how to use it in more effective ways. Now, for those of you may not be familiar with eSLA or have tried it without any training, I would encourage you to take a look at our website. If you go to our dsps.wi.gov, and it'll be right on the front page as seen below in this particular slide. Basically, it's got some applications that you can simply highlight, and they're all short, they're not hours long, on different aspects of the eSLA system. Should you have questions, feel free to direct an email to Plan Scheduling, and this is the email that you can direct your questions to. Now, having said that, that's kind of a quick and dirty on eSLA. I am not a aficionado on the application of eSLA. I'm learning as much as the next guy. We had a lot of discussions last week on some of the different scenarios that come into play and how to input the data. So there's a learning curve going on. There's no doubt. But I will also say that by the end of the week, things were starting to move slower or move faster. And I know today I was able to kick some information out that quite simply would have taken me significantly longer to do last week. So there is a speed in transition that's occurring, and hopefully you'll see that as the weeks progress. Now, the next thing I'd like to do is just touch base on some fun, because this is the ASHRAE group and the specifications group. So it's always nice to see some of the things that are out there, or if you will, maybe not to see some of the things that are out there. But I call this the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so in protection of the innocent, I won't necessarily say where all these are at, although I may point fingers from time to time. But I think you'll find this kind of fun. So let's just take a look at this first picture here. We have an exhaust. Now, normally an exhaust fan such as this on the outside wall, if this would be, depending on the kind of exhaust, right? If this would be environmental exhaust, would be like clothes dryer exhaust, could also be toilet room exhaust, those types of environmental exhaust, you only need to be 3 feet from an openable window. Now, I can't tell if this window is capable of being openable or not, but if it were, we'd have a big problem here. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion, depending on what the exact exhaust might be here. Now, if it was something other than environmental, maybe it was some kind of a venting or something along those lines, then you need to be 10 feet from an openable window measured horizontally. Otherwise, the exhaust would need to be 3 feet higher, the exhaust would need to be 3 feet higher than an intake. So there's a couple things to be aware of here. Here's a picture from the field on a hydronic system. Actually, really well done. Really nothing wrong with this. It's just, it was just really well done. And the inspector sent me a picture. Now, we don't always get those brand new installations, but on occasion we get some unique fan installations. And, don't get me wrong, there's always somebody who comes back and says, we just can't find the right equipment, or we just didn't have time to do it right. Well, if you didn't have time to do it right the first time, what makes you think you're going to have time to do it right the second time? But sometimes we learn from earlier installations. And as you can see here, this is clearly a fan. It's on a sloped roof. Now, if this roof is 312 or greater, you have to have a platform for that exhaust fan. And additionally, if you have to have access for maintenance, you need to be, the code will say 30 inches, but I'll push it to 36 if it's single phase, as per the National Electrical Code, in any kind of area where the electrical wiring would need access. Additionally, if there's a 30-inch drop off of that platform, you need to have guardrails 42 inches tall with a minimum 21-inch brake rail in the middle. Now, if this roof is over 16 feet above grade, now, not even the roof, if the equipment is 16 feet above grade, then you have to have a permanent access to the roof. Now, you got to be careful about that 16 feet, because some people, obviously, they don't want to put it on the outside of the building. The local high school kids come over, they climb up the ladder and they go on top of your roof and do all kinds of vandalism. So what you want to do, if you don't want to have it on the outside, you can put it on the inside, and it doesn't have to be directly to the roof. So for instance, if you walked into the vestibule and the business offices and continued on through into the factory, and then maybe took a ladder to get up to the mezzanine, and then from the mezzanine, you took maybe some alternating treads to get to the roof. Now, I realize that's not one single action for egress to get to the roof, but the fact remains it is permanent. The entire walkway is permanent. There's nothing going to be removed. All of that was permanent, and that would be acceptable for access to this particular exhaust fan. Now, here's a vehicle, could be vehicle repair, could be vehicle storage, enclosed parking garage. You'll see that you got some exhaust ductwork that seems to extend to within 18 inches of the floor. I always get the question, where do you find in the code 18 inches? I can't find anything. Well, under 50211, it does talk about in the mechanical code that you need to have your exhaust inlets located where the greatest contamination is located. All right, so it still doesn't say 18 inches. Well, okay, I'll live with that. But at the same time, if you look at the National Electrical Code, it identifies that at 18 inches, gasoline, et cetera, is considered to be, that's a hazardous area under section 511 of the electrical code. And if you go under 303 of the mechanical code, you'll find that it also addresses the need for ignitions to be located greater than 18 inches above the floor for safety reasons. So although it's not explicit, it's implied, and the department retains the need to have these inlets for exhaust from, say, service repair and or enclosed parking garages to be located within 18 inches of the floor. Now, it's a real different concept here. If, for instance, you have compressed natural gas, if you're going to do vehicle repair or service on compressed natural gas type space, instead of pulling from the floor, you need to pull air from within 12 inches of the ceiling, because compressed natural gas is actually lighter than air. So it's a whole different concept. And instead of at a half a CFM exhaust rate minimum as required by the code for motorized vehicles, compressed natural gas bases its exhaust rate based on the volume of the space and not the floor area. So it's a kind of a different animal when you're dealing with compressed natural gas. There aren't a lot of buildings like that. I've had discussions with some of the design group who'd like to have both a vehicle repair of gasoline and diesel as well as compressed natural gas. And that's challenging because, remember, one needs to have the inlet on near the floor. The other needs the exhaust inlet to be located near the ceiling. And because you don't know which particular vehicle is going to be in there for service and repair, and since the exhaust rates are different depending on the volume of the building versus the floor area of the building, you basically have to have two separate systems. Now, some designers and owners have chosen to designate certain service repair areas as only service repair of, say, gasoline and diesel vehicles, and then have a solid separation wall, etc. And then identify a different work bay as for the repair of compressed natural gas type systems. So this is one of the good. It's not a bad or ugly. Now, here's a little place up north in northern Michigan, and you can see the cooking going on, and there's a hood. You got to be within 4 feet from the bottom of the hood to the cooking area. It might be a little close, but also there's some rules as to the need, as to the backdrop. And you can see there's a window behind that cooking area, which under today's rules would not be allowed. You'd need to have something solid behind that, both from the standpoint of the commercial building code, but also the restaurant rules as applied by the Department of Health Services. Now, guard system could be used to not only safeguard a stairway or even a ramp, but also on equipment as located on the roof, as we saw earlier. So in looking at this, do you think this, if it was 42 inches tall, and assuming the spacing is less than 4 inches, do you think this would be an acceptable guardrail so as to protect the users? In this case, this is a walkway, but certainly it could be a service area related to a piece of HVAC equipment. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not what you would normally see. It's not standard by any means, but if it could meet, somebody pushing on it, if you will, from horizontally with a 250-pound load, and the same thing goes with the rails in the middle of the wire and material in the middle. If it can withstand that loading, this could be an acceptable guardrail. Now, obviously, upblast fans come in all kinds of shapes and form, but in this particular case, this one was flipped up so we can view it. But you can see the electrical was placed in maybe not the most appropriate of positions. And I'm going to guess that's probably not the way the installer anticipated the flexible conduit to be placed into their particular fan, and probably raise a few questions. Now, many of you deal with upblast fans, and having said that, you can see here that if indeed this was a kitchen upblast fan, you'd really start scratching your head. And you can kind of see off to the left there in the corner that some of the exhaust materials are starting to stick to the wall of the building. Now, normally that upblast fan would have to be as tall than the nearest building construction, typically a parapet nearby, and so that the exhaust would literally clear the roof line, as well as not stick to the building, creating a nuisance, a hazardous nuisance. You know, here's a building where we have a vent, we have an outside air intake, and we have an exhaust. Now, the vent, as it's located, doesn't look to be too bad, but usually a vent has to be 10 feet from the air intake. So I guess as you look at it going from left to right, there should be at least 10 feet between the two. And an air intake and an exhaust, in going from the middle arrow to the far right, there should be 10 feet horizontally between the two, because obviously exhaust air is going to be warm air from inside the building. It's probably going to be heated, and hot air rises. And so if you have your intake too much in line with that exhaust outlet, you're probably going to contaminate by short circuiting and bringing air back into the building that should have been literally kept outside. Now here's a picture of a series of windows. You got some PVC venting, which for sake of discussion, we'll just call them furnace vents. And then we've got the gas meter down there on the bottom. Now, one of the things you first got to ask yourself, are the windows openable or not? Well, we don't know. But if they were openable, typically when you have direct vent sealed combustion exhaust, you need to be, in general, anywhere from 6 to 12 inches, depending if you're greater than 50,000 BTU or less than 10,000 BTU. It'd be 6, 9, and 12 inches. As you go up to 50,000, being 50,000 would require a minimum 12-inch clearance to any kind of an intake. Now, as far as the gas meter, basically the gas meter only requires to be 3 feet away from a sparking mechanism per NFPA 54. So although meters will issue some gas, by the time it would get to the window, etc., it would be sufficiently dispersed that it would not have any harmful effects. So this is a type 2 commercial kitchen hood. What do you think? Do you think that would be legal out in the field or not? Just kind of give yourself some time to think here a little bit. You know, you saw this, you know, this is supposed to be a listed, tested kitchen hood. It looks like somebody made a mistake, put a hole in the wrong place, and decided, well, we'll compensate for it, and we'll put some sheet metal over the top, and we'll run with it. Well, there are some points of contention. First off, remember, this was a listed, tested commercial kitchen hood. So I can, in my mind, justify that this wasn't the way it was designed, nor was it tested. So you're probably going to have a conflict with the listing from the manufacturer if, for whatever reason, you're going to modify this system, or in this case specifically this kitchen hood as you show here. So that's going to be a problem. Now, if this were not a listed, tested kitchen hood, say it was built in Joe's backside HVAC and it met the need for brazen welding and the minimum gauge of the metal and size of the hood over the actual cooking surface, and that it would be 6 inches over any open edge, and they did this. Well, it's not a listed hood, so it's really not a conflict. And as long as it would be effective in nature, as meeting the code in all other aspects, kitchen hoods do not need to be listed in the code. Only when kitchen hoods have an exhaust rate of 5,000 CFM or greater. Now that's a heck of a kitchen hood, pull a hair right off you. But if it's over 5,000, the energy code, interestingly enough, drives the need that that hood has to be a listed, tested kitchen hood. Now here's one. I want you to take a look. All right, those are some hydronic tubing. And take a look on the lower one there. You see the tubing coming up, really nice, very tight, looks very efficient. PVC tubing is being directed up through a non-fire rated floors and walls. Okay, so now think about that. Non-fire rated. Okay, doesn't seem to be too bad, you know, not fire rated, shouldn't be a problem. Well, if you do some investigation, the building code under section 714.5.2 allows, if you had, for instance, 2 stories, or if you will, 1 floor assembly being penetrated, that you're fine. I mean, this would be fine as long as the annular space was filled with an approved material to resist free passage of flame and products of combustion. Now, where this gets a little awkward is that once you go beyond a single floor assembly, even if it's non-rated, and you start doing multiple floor ratings, then you're probably going to be stuck with a shaft. So something to think about. I'm sure many of you have had to deal with these, and leaves everybody going, scratching their heads going, what the heck? What are we supposed to do? So I want you to take a look at this. We've all had it. The space between the permanent ceiling and the cloud, right? This is kind of like a secondary ceiling below, is not treated as a plenum. So I want you to think about this. If the air distribution is occurring above the cloud, all right, so we have a ceiling, we have a solid ceiling, then we have this kind of aesthetically pleasing ceiling below the main ceiling. Okay, so the question is that required to be treated as a plenum? Now, we've got a couple of issues here. We've actually got a couple of codes at play. We've got obviously 602 of the International Mechanical Code, which if it's a plenum, you certainly can't have PVC and certain types of plastics, etc., in a plenum. To complement the building code, you have the National Electrical Code, which has similar discussions because obviously they've got a lot of wiring with plastic or rubber around their wiring. And if that's in a plenum, it needs to be plenum rated wiring. So the two groups, I've worked with our state commercial building inspectors, and of course, we've got the same problem they do because we're trying to identify, is this a plenum or isn't it? And what we came to a conclusion, and that's what I wish to share with you today, is that if you can't see the distribution of air, in other words, the diffuser register or grill. Now, if this is a small cloud, you'll be able to walk around the room and look up, if you will, into the area above the cloud. Then we don't count that as a plenum. But if this is a rather large cloud, let's say you have a room 10 feet by 10 feet, and your cloud is an 8 foot by 8 foot secondary ceiling, and you're doing air distribution at that point and just having it disperse on the outside edges, that is a plenum, because even if I stand, I can't see, more than likely see where that inlet or return is located. In this case, it's a return. I can't see that. Therefore, it's considered to be a plenum. And if it's a plenum, then everything above that cloud is required to be treated as a plenum. Now, I'll let you know what's in the box, kind of like the magic. There's a unit heater in there. They didn't like the looks of it, so they encased it. They simply just didn't want to take the time to remove it. So, is that illegal? I mean, if it's shut off, if there's no gas piping, Now, what happens if there is gas piping going to it? Is that a concern? Teresa Black sent me this picture. She scratched her head on it. It definitely is a unit heater, but because all the gas, etc., was still in there, the fact remains is that the unit heater itself still had clearance to combustibles, etc., that per the listing said that you couldn't put a box around it. And therefore, she required that the box be removed or that the unit heater be removed. Now, this looks like a professional take, huh? What do you think? Now, this was a penetration into a fire-rated assembly. And because it was a penetration, it needed to be properly caulked with a listed tested system. What do you think? Do you think the gypsum board there that was screwed down and the gook red fire caulk was appropriately installed per the listing? Probably not. Here we have an addition to an existing building. It's proceeding with an existing upblast fan for use with a type 1 commercial hood still in use. So this addition's going on, but they're still using the hood. All right. Now you can see this is an older type building, but just look at it, right? Where you see where that exhaust outlet is, where the rim is, it looks like there's building materials above that. So if that's the case, where do you think the grease that gets released from that upblast fan is going to go? It's probably going to go right onto the materials. And thus, according to the code, that's a nuisance. It's a dangerous nuisance. So actions should be taken to eliminate that. Now, again, this is an old installation, but if this was a type 1 hood, first off, it needs to be 10 feet above grade. And if that door is 6'8", needless to say, we're a few feet short. Additionally, we need to be 10 feet from intakes into the building. And an intake could be anything, whether a mechanical intake or it could be natural intake by way of an openable door. And again, that would be an issue here also. These kind of exhausts on the sidewall need to have the capability of being on hinges so that you can open them up and clean them out. And so there's a lot of issues here, but again, this is an older installation. It's not a new one, but we can learn a lot in how the code has changed over the years. This is similar to our first one. So we'll take a look here. Again, we have an upblast fan. We seem to have a intake immediately adjacent to it. And you can see here on the wall off to the left that how all the contaminant is hitting the sidewall of the parapet there. And in this particular case, this upblast fan should have been extended at least to the top of the parapet. Additionally, it should be 10 feet away from an intake, or at least 3 feet higher than the intake. So that's there's a few things that need to at least catch your attention here. Here we've got a building where you can see the vents in between the 3 large overhead doors on those small little break walls, support walls. You can see the vents up, about 80% of the way up. But a vent has to be at least 10 feet from a building opening. Well, that's not 10 feet, and it's certainly not 3 feet higher than a building opening because, again, hot air rises. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, but that's 1 foot below the building opening. So probably needs a little extra work. And speaking of additional work, you might want to organize yourself a little better than what was found out in the field by one of our inspectors. Now here's a little game. Can a building inspector require the installation of a commercial kitchen hood in a motorized vehicle? Now think about that. Now it's a building inspector, and we're talking about a commercial kitchen hood, so there's food being prepared, but we're talking about a motorized vehicle. So what do you think? Do you think this is something that's within his option? Well, as it turns out, the commercial building code doesn't apply to motorized vehicles. So the building inspector really has nothing to do with this particular action. But your local building inspector does have oversight on this through the International Fire Code and the state fire code, SPS 314. In there, it says that if this vehicle is involved with at least 12 public servings in a year, and their cooking area is greater than 365 feet, then you have to have a kitchen hood with suppression system. So something that a lot of you may or may not have realized. Of course, there's always some innovative people out there. This is a welding station. I'm sure you appreciate a good weld when you see one. You know, there's some pretty nice sheet metal coming off the wall there, right to the top of that wash basin. I should say fume hood. Probably not code compliant. What do you think? Now, I know this is an HVAC group, but I always like to point my fingers. The trusses on this wood frame building were all up, but obviously they weren't properly stabilized in their positions. And overnight, the wind came and knocked them down. Now, that's a big problem in a lot of ways, because now those trusses, many of them have been damaged, and the truss manufacturer is not going to stand behind it. Here's some commercial air intakes, commercial clothes dryer vents, and some rooftops. So again, we have intakes on the bottom. We have the exhaust from the clothes dryers on top. Now, if there's at least 3 feet in between, we're probably going to be okay. But we do have the intake of the air handling unit, which you have to be a bit concerned about. Now that, again, depending on the angle of the slope of the roof, if it's 312 or greater, technically there should be a service platform provided. And additionally, there should be permanent access to the roof. And if someone's going to climb on the roof, if it's anything greater than 412, would need to have some kind of specially access. And here's a clothes dryer. And we have a tough time with clothes dryers because obviously they're not always part of the building plan. It's usually installed after the fact at a later time. And I'm sure the locals would reinforce my comment that proper permits for installation of clothes dryers are not always pulled. Clothes dryers must exhaust to the outside of the building. And there's always somebody who thinks that, hey, you know, all that heat, if I just keep it in the building, that'll work great. But the other difficulty with it is that you got a high moisture content, and that is a promoter of mold in the building, which is another whole challenge. So this is not a legal installation by any means. Now, this is a kitchen hood, and you'll see that there's a suppression nozzle in there, and there's a heat detector in there. But more importantly, I want you to look on the bottom side, so to speak, and see the nails puncturing this type 1 kitchen hood exhaust duct. Now, for whatever reason, according to the inspector, the nails, which should have been on the outside to hold the grease duct enclosure wrap in place, the user felt it would be better if he just simply turned them around and nailed it into place and puncturing the steel, and of course allowing the opportunity for grease to protrude in out of the duct and into the adjacent space. Now this, if you run out of space on your kitchen, you can always move over to your furnace and see if you can get some additional cooking performed there. I just saw that. I had to throw that in there. And that's just some quick comments. Always fun to talk and see some of the things that are out there. Some of it, like I say, is the good. Some is bad. And quite frankly, some of it is ugly. But I think we've all had it. I don't always get the chance to show all this. But, you know, I hope it put a smile on your face. You learned a little bit. Well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open things up. I don't think we're going to be able to take, you know, questions from all 100 people at once because everybody will speak at once. But if you can type in any questions, I'll try to address to the best of my ability. I did see one earlier that there was a question from Tom. He was having difficulties with eSLA in, you know, updating his information and getting things online. God, I'd love to be able to give you a troubleshoot right here, right now. but I'm not really in that position. I'm on the end rather than the front. But if you direct your question to our scheduling, plan scheduling group, they'll do their best. I believe that they were also establishing a new email address so that questions could be directed to them. I also understand that for eSLA, they will be providing additional training here in the near future. I would keep your eyes and ears out. Keep an eye on our front page of our DSPS website so that you can join us in that training. So any questions? Any questions? All right. Well, let me give this back to.
Wow, no questions. I'm surprised.
All right. Well, how's that? And with that said, I hope you found some of the information helpful and insightful. And if you have additional questions, I'll do my best. I'm certainly just one reviewer out of many. We too are learning as much as everyone else. As you can tell, I don't have the answers on eSLA yet. I'm learning on my own, but I did want to provide to you some insight on why the change. It wasn't done simply for change. It was actually, it just was mandated because our technology wasn't matching the new technology of today. Nick, anything else that you would that I can do for you in your group?
No, we.
Thank you so much for presenting. I'm happy that I didn't see any of my projects on your pictures, so that was a big win.
You and many others, you know.
Yeah, no, if there's no questions, we can end this presentation. And Randy, just thank you so much again for your time. Appreciate it.
Very good. And I always enjoy working with your group. And hopefully a year from now, I can actually be there in person. I miss the camaraderie and I miss the side discussions, because I think that's where a lot of information is shared. And it's not that everyone, it's just a very challenging topic here as we're working through the internet. You lose that one-on-one, and I look forward to having that opportunity to cross with your members once again. I thank you for the opportunity to talk with you, and I certainly hope that if you do have a question, please direct them to the department. We'll do our best to try to get you up and running.
Sounds great. All right, thank you, Randy. Thank you, CSI, for joining us today too, as well. Hopefully we can do more joint meetings in the future.